Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, it's perfect. Cool. So thank you for the intro. Don't forget about the PyCharm licenses. My name is Simona Cotin, and I work as a cloud developer advocate for Microsoft, where I get to basically, my role is to make the JavaScript community happy on Azure. So if you have any kind of questions about JavaScript or about Azure or about Angular, like I'm a huge Angular fan, make sure to reach out on Twitter at Simona_Cotin, and even like Simona.Cotin at Microsoft.com. That's a super nice drawing from Ashley, who's on our team. She's doing all the gophers, like she's designing all the gophers, and this was made specially for our team. So I heard today that I'm a huge fan of communities, right? So I've heard today that Plone has one of the best communities in the world. That basically is a drinking community that has a software problem. Do you relate to that? That's what Alexander told me. So I'm not sure if he was lying to me or not. I haven't seen the beers yet, but I hope that they will be here, right? Cool. So today I'm going to talk. I'm going to try to take the inner Sheldon from each and one of you and make it faster. Make you faster. Make you a super developer. Increase productivity. How many Big Bang Theory fans do we have here? Well, quite a few. Do you want to be like Flash? Yeah? We're going to do that by looking into how we can improve our productivity by building a continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline. And one of the reasons I'm talking about that is actually in this slide, which comes from one of Igor Minar's talk at Angular Mix, where he was talking about software engineering as a discipline. And he highlighted things like, works on my machine, or we haven't changed anything. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Do you often say that? Like, you look at the code, there's an issue there, and you're like, oh my God, it worked yesterday. What has happened? I haven't changed anything. And then the colleague nearby is like, yeah, but it works on my machine. So those are all common problems that we can actually address with CI/CD. How many of you here are implementing continuous delivery pipelines or are embedding this in their day-to-day software development process? So there's quite a few hands there. That's good. I hope I'll get to teach you some new stuff. So for the rest of you that are feeling like this, I'm actually going to show you how to implement this in an easy way with Circle CI and Docker, and also be able to deploy your application on Azure. So you too feel scared and you feel like this is a DevOps job? Or maybe you feel like you should have like mad terminal skills and like be able to control everything from the terminal? Or even worse, have to use a super complicated UI where you need to configure like tons of jobs that are going to maybe at some point fail or at any point fail, and you're not sure why that happens? Well, my role today is to kind of debunk all those myths. And I'm going to show you that you too can be a CI/CD master. Who doesn't want to be a CI/CD master? And first, let's see what it stands for, right? Couldn't I care less? Does that sound right? Yeah? It's actually continuous integration and continuous delivery. And more often, it's continuous delivery, building a continuous delivery pipeline. That's what we refer to. And there's a few key things that we need to keep in mind when we're trying to build a continuous delivery pipeline. And the first thing that's very important is automation. Like, I'm sure that everyone here likes to automate their way out of development, right? So which are the key things that you need to automate? Well, the first thing is your build, right? Because you want to make sure that you don't have a single person in your team that knows how to build your source code and maybe goes around with a floppy disk asking for source code that you've implemented, right? And then merges everything together. Or you want to have an automated build process. You also want to be able to deploy your code in an automated manner to any kind of environment. Like you want to be able to deploy to a testing environment, to a staging environment, and finally to your production environment by just the click of a button. You don't want to have a manual process involved into your deployment. And then you want to run automated tests because you want to make sure that you want to be confident about the code that you're putting into production. Right? Who wants to be confident about code put into production? We want our users to use our product and, feel good about it. We also want to have good change management. And we don't want to have only the source code in a version control system because that's very common, right? Almost everyone is putting their code in GitHub or Bitbucket or SVN, like we have that already. But we also want to make sure that our database schemas and migrations are in source control and a change management system because we want to be able to roll back quickly. And if there's any issue at any point on any of our machines, we want to make sure that everything's reproducible. And finally, we want to make sure that our deployment scripts are also in a change management system. And the key element in a continuous delivery pipeline is also continuous integration. And in a continuous integration environment, our team, basically all the members of our team, are committing code on a daily basis, and they're integrating with each other's work on the main branch, right? Do you do that? Are you checking in code on a daily basis? Is your team doing that? Cool, yeah, that's perfect. Are you also confident that you have a battery of tests that are going to, like, whenever someone checks in the code, commits code, tests are going to be run, and then you're going to identify bugs based on your the new changes? Are you confident that that's in place? Yeah, awesome. And then another important item here is that we need to make sure that fixing production is our main priority. So you need to be able to fix your production in 10 or 20 minutes, like immediately after you've noticed that your production is broken. And so why would you put in the effort of implementing a continuous delivery pipeline? Well, first of all, because you want to lower the deployment risk. So whenever you're pushing into production a huge amount of code, you're basically increasing your chances of bugs, of things that can go wrong, and you're blocking yourself from being able to identify quickly what went wrong in your previous deployment. So the smaller the changes, the easier it will be for you to actually identify where the issue is. You also get real progress whenever you have a continuous delivery pipeline in place. Because do you think that a feature is done when the developer says it works on my machine? Is that enough for us to say that, okay, we've finished this, it's all good? I think we should be able to run our code in a very close to production environment, like maybe staging, right? And that's when, once you have your features deployed to staging, and all the tests are passing, everything is okay, that's when you can say, yeah, so my feature is now done. And that's when you can update the nice Jira chart, the burn down chart, right? Do you use Jira? Okay, there's a few hands. And also, whenever you're putting in code into production, you get feedback from your users, right? So whenever you've added a new feature, a new UX pattern, or you've just removed a feature for your users, if you're going to deploy that in a year's time, your users won't be able to give you feedback, and they're just going to struggle with your product. But if you have small incremental changes, you'll be able to implement your product just like your users want it. So, taking a step back, we want to automate our build in order to implement this continuous delivery pipeline. We want to automate our build, right? And this is our task. We also want to automate our tests and the deployment process. Does anyone know a good build tool for Angular? No? Anyone? Angular CLI. Has anyone here used Angular CLI? Okay. You don't believe it's a good build tool then. So what we're going to do is use the Angular CLI to build our project. And it's actually, everything is super simple. It's out of the box. Whenever you're creating a project with Angular CLI, you're going to get all the build configuration with Webpack inside your project. You won't have to do anything. You'll just have to run ng build, and that's it. It's going to output all your files. And then we're going to use the prod flag. And what that's going to do is basically going to produce files that are optimized for production. So that means that we're going to enable features like ahead-of-time compilation. Are you familiar with ahead-of-time compilation? Okay, cool. So ahead-of-time compilation just says that instead of running your Angular compiler and compiling your Angular code in the browser, you're going to compile your code at build time, and that just makes your application much faster. So if you're not using this, I highly recommend you do that. And Angular CLI just allows you to easily implement this. You also have flags like, let's see if this works. Flags like output hashing, and then like tree shaking, and like all the good features for optimizing your Angular code are going to be in building your environment for production, your application for production. And also Build Optimizer is going to do some of the tree shaking for you, and it's going to do also cache busting. So yeah, lots of good things there. For tests, we're also going to use the Angular CLI for running our tests, and we're going to add the single run flag because that just says that your tests are not going to run continuously. Angular CLI is not going to wait for you to make changes to your tests. So this was all fun and interesting, but I'm going to just go ahead and demo some stuff. I hope that... Can we turn off this mic, or I'm just going to do this? Okay, so I have just created Angular CLI, a project with Angular CLI, and the way to do that is basically by running ng-new dream app. And that's just going to generate like a basic component. It's going to add all the build configuration and test configuration for you. So I'm not going to do this yet, but I'm gonna show you how you can configure Circle CI to run your build and run your test in an automated manner. Has anyone here used Circle CI before? So there's a few hands here. Yeah, cool. I'm happy to see that. So for those of you who haven't, getting started with Circle CI is very easy. You just have to go to circleci.com, and then you sign up for a new account, and you can do that with your Bitbucket account or with your GitHub account, or you can even use your Google account, but that's just going to mean that you won't actually build your code. You're just going to be able to read through see some examples, and then you'll go ahead and connect your GitHub or Bitbucket account. One of the issues that I've had with Circle CI was that it was asking for, Circle CI will ask you to give them permissions to access all your repositories and all your issues for those repositories, even if they're like public or private. So I didn't go ahead and use my main GitHub account to use Circle CI. I created a new account until they're actually going to create more like granular repository access. So I've already created the Circle CI account, And you can see here, this is the dashboard. Unfortunately, the resolution here isn't too great. But you're going to find here the list of builds that you've ran, a list of workflows, and a list of projects. So what I'm going to do here, actually, I'm just going to unfollow this project. It just means I've removed it from my history. And I'm going to go ahead and basically add a project. And did I just remove Circle CI or Circle CI demo? Demo, okay. So I shouldn't have done that, right? So here you can see what it takes to set up Circle CI to run your build. The first step is choosing the operating system that you want to run your build on, and it can be either Linux or Mac OS, right? And we all love Linux, right? So I'm going to choose Linux. And then Circle CI has 2 versions. The latest version, 2.0, is actually faster, so I'm going to just stick to that. And then you can use your languages. And as you can see, both Python and Node.js are supported, but there's also things like Elixir or Java or Ruby. And because I like Node, I chose Node for this. And then Circle CI is going to tell us what we need to add to our project to run our continuous integration pipeline. And we need to create a Circle CI folder, and then we need to add the config.yaml file. And they're already generating for us a config, which is the sample, like, basic configuration. And here you'll see fields like the version of Circle CI that you've included, and a collection of jobs that Circle CI will run for you. And one of the most important jobs that you need, and is actually required, is the build job. This is basically the main entry point that Circle CI uses to run your automation. And you also need a place to run those jobs, right? So you can either choose a machine, which will be a virtual machine that will give you sudo access, and it will also take a little longer to start up. Like, you'll need 30 seconds to 1 minute for your machine to start up, for your environment to start up, to run your jobs. Or you can use Docker. And with Docker, this will start instantaneously. And because Circle CI is very nice, they've also created a few pre-built images that you can use. So in our case, we're just using the Node.js image. And this is the repository that it's going to look for the Node.js image. Are you guys familiar with Docker? How many of you are using Docker? Well, that's a lot. That's very good. So all this is not news to you. Cool. And then you can specify the working directory, and I'm just gonna let this to be default. And then the list of steps that you're gonna run is actually here. So the first thing that's happening is checking out the code. And then Circle CI does some caching for you. So it will cache your node modules. And initially it will verify, is there any cache for me out there? And it's going to check for the key that has been generated by running checksum on our package JSON file. And then it's going to install our npm dependencies, save the cache, and run the tests. But actually, I've created this. Just a second. Can everyone see this? Okay, yeah? Okay. So this is my config file that will actually run the steps that I've mentioned earlier. So first thing is building our code for production using the build optimizer flag. And then we're not going to report any progress because we don't want to pollute the logs on our server. And then we want to run the tests. And I chose to run a single run and don't report any progress. And we can see the logs for this project and build. Okay, Circle CI. I'm just going to change the text in our app component. At PloneConf. And I'm gonna commit this change, this really small change, to GitHub. And this is going to trigger a new build on Circle CI. Small change. I imagine everyone here is like a super proficient terminal and GitHub and everything. But like, if some of you don't know, you can actually create GitHub aliases. And git CA is basically an alias that will add all my changes and commit at the same time. So I think this is faster. I mean, this is faster. So now if I refresh my page, well, for some reason, I have to start building the project, right? From the projects list, I want to add project. I want to add the Circle CI demo, and I want to start building it. And that's how you just connect your GitHub project to your Circle CI pipeline. And in this dashboard, in this new page, you will see things like the version of Circle CI that you're using. You will be able to cancel your build or rebuild or start a rebuild. See the progress of your build or of your job when this has started, and you also get an estimated time for your build. And because I've actually ran this project before, here you can see that on average my build will take around 1 minute and 41 seconds, which is not too bad. And then you will see which is the last commit that this is running. And steps like spinning up the environment, which takes only 1 second, checking out our code, restoring cache if there's any, and in our case there was one, and also running the npm install, and then all the other steps that we've defined. So I thought this was super easy. I was asking myself, like, is this all I need to do to actually run my build and my tests in an automated manner? And yeah, that's all you need to do. Like, obviously, there's more complicated things you can do, and Circle CI, the power of Circle CI is really in parallelizing your test runs, and you can define workflows. But if you're, at the moment, if you're not running any CI/CD, like just having your project in GitHub or in Bitbucket, you can actually connect it with Circle CI, and you can have this running for you in no time. Cool, so let's see, well, already you can see that our build and our tests have passed. This was quite fast, right? And you have the result here. Cool. So let's go back to our presentation. So this was automating the build and the test. But then, can we actually do better? Is this enough, or do we want to also be able to say that it not only works on my machine, or whenever it works on my machine, I'm sure that it works on Victor's machine as well, because we want to make sure that we have the same environment. And obviously, you might have already guessed, Docker is our solution here. And why would we choose to use Docker? Well, because, first of all, because we have an isolated environment, right? And then it's also repeatable. So I'm building my Docker instance, and then I can easily give that file to Victor, or Victor can actually reproduce everything that I'm doing on my machine as well. And it also enables you to build a microservices application, architecture. And I have a quick demo for this. It's really, really quick. Where basically, in order to run Docker, you need to obviously install Docker, and then you need to grab a type of image, right? And one of the smallest images around is that also runs nginx is the nginx Alpine. So basically, I can just go say docker pull nginx. Let's see if I get this right. Does anyone here always misspell nginx? It's terrible. Is this right? It is. I think it is. Okay, cool. So I've already downloaded this. So obviously it will. It just says that it's up to date. And if we want to run our project, which is Circle CI demo in Docker, we can do that easily by just running docker run, and then we are just connecting our 8080 port to the 80 port in Docker. And then we are saying that we want to map our current directory, pwd, dist, and that's where, like Angular CLI, when you're building your project for production, Angular CLI will put your files into the dist folder. So I'm just going to copy the dist folder from my current directory to the HTML folder in nginx in my Docker instance. Okay, user share ng, let's spell this right. Nope. Okay. And then I'm just tagging this. I'm just running the nginx Alpine. You know what? I've run this before. Sorry? Oh, volume. Yes, you are right. Okay, so now if I just make a small change here and just build it using the Angular CLI, and I'm going to add this DOP flag and set it to false, because what this does is like delete output path. We're saying that we don't want to delete the dist folder, because if we're doing that, our Docker instance is going to lose the connection to our dist folder. So we want to keep it. And our application is building, and Docker has already started, so I can just go to my local host and already see. Why isn't this working? We can already see the basic Angular CLI application running with the new changes, which is quite cool, right? Okay, so then once you want to, like, this is running on my local, but then you also want to be able to, as I mentioned earlier, replicate this. So I want to actually have a Docker file that Victor can go and build the Docker machine by himself. And I also want to be able to deploy my Docker image in the cloud. So you can do that. You can deploy your image in Docker Hub, or you can deploy it to Azure. I've chosen Azure, so that's why here I'm building my Docker image, and then I'm tagging it, and I'm sending it to the Azure Container registry, which is like Simona Cotin. Azure CR.io, and then I'm creating, the name is Angular CLI Nginx, and then the tag is 1.0, and I'm building in the current context, like where my Docker file is. And I'm also logging into my Docker registry and pushing the image to the Docker registry. These are the steps that we need to run. And so, how many of you have heard about the Azure Container registry? There's 1, 2 brave hands. Cool, 3. So Docker Container Registry allows you to push Docker images or definitions to to Azure and host them there. And the good part is if you want to have private, like a private repository, Azure will allow you to do that. And also, it allows you to connect to, for example, Azure Web App. So the scenario here is basically you create this Docker image, and then you push it to Azure Container registry. And you can set up webhooks that will basically watch for this trigger, will watch for every push that happens. And then this push will trigger an action of deploying your app to Azure Web App. So immediately your deployment will happen. And so Azure App Service gives you a fully managed platform that you don't have to basically manage your operating system. You don't have to install like maybe Python or Node or whatever. You don't have to patch your operating system. It also handles auto-scaling out of the box for you. So if you get from 10 users to 1 million users, Azure will make sure to scale for you so that it accommodates all your new users. And then it also implements load balancing for you. So I guess that like here, if you're not using Azure, what kind of cloud providers are you using? Are you putting your code to the cloud? Yeah? Using AWS maybe? Yeah? DigitalOcean? Okay, cool. Yeah, so like the Azure App Service would be similar to EC2, for example, but you get more, like you get better features with Azure App Service. So demo, like I'm just gonna quickly walk you through the code. This is a different project that I've built where I've added to the build for production and running your tests. I've added 3 new commands, and we've just seen them already. Like I'm running Docker build, and then I'm logging into my container registry, and then I'm pushing the image, the new image, with the code we've just built. And another cool thing with Circle CI is that you can define build variables, and you do that easily in the project settings. You have some build settings here, and you have build environment and environment variables, and this is where you get to define your variables like the Docker users and Docker user and Docker password. And as I mentioned, I do have a container registry in Azure, and this is how it looks like. It's super easy to create. You just click new, and then you give it a name, and you can see. You can add a webhook, and this is my test Docker webhook. And here you can see when was the last time that a new push has happened. And for me, it was at 1:15. That's the last time I changed my image. I could push a new change here. Again, maybe add new text here. What do you guys want to, like maybe Plone conf is really cool. Does that sound right? Yeah? I mean, okay. So then I'm just gonna commit my code here. Another small change. This is not very descriptive. Everyone loves commit messages like these, right? Okay, so the first thing that we should be able to see now is that our Circle CI build has just started because I've just pushed a new change. And then our build and our tests are going to run. And then our new Docker image is going to be pushed to Azure Container registry. So I'm going to keep this open, maybe. Portal, and go to Portal Azure and show you how you can create a new app service. So the 3 people that have heard about Azure, I guess you've already seen the portal. It's quite easy to use. You just have to click New, and then let's say we're searching for web app, for containers, and we're going to click Create. And then I'm going to give it a name like PloneConf. And this is basically the URL where our application is going to be available at. So then I'll have to choose my subscription that I want to deploy my application with. And then the resource group is basically a way to group all the types of resources that you're going to use. And as you can see, this is running Linux. And you can configure your container. So you can use either Docker Hub or a private registry or the container registry. So then I'm going to use the one that I've already created with the image that I've already created and then the 1.0 tag. I'm not going to click OK because I've already created this. So we can just go ahead and open this one, the overview for this app service, and here you'll also have like some metrics for your application, like requests and HTTP errors. But the important thing here is the URL where you're actually going to see your application deployed. And there you go. PloneConf is really cool. My deployment has already finished. The build has successfully finished 2 minutes ago. And we can also see maybe in here, we can go back to the registry resource and see that our push webhook has been triggered. There's a time zone difference here, like 2 hours, but it should be right. So I think that concludes my last demo. So what we've managed to do here is basically build our application and test our application using Angular CLI. We've managed to automate our tests and our build process using Circle CI. And we've managed to deploy our application to Azure App Service using Docker. I think that's pretty awesome. Do you agree? Yeah? Well, initially, we were kind of scared, like what's happening with CI/CD, what's all that. I hope that now you feel a bit more relaxed about that, and you're a bit more like this cat. And if you're curious about like all the 3 steps that I've added to my Circle CI configuration, make sure to go to the first link there. And to learn more about Circle CI, just go to circleci.com. And to learn more about Azure App Service, just go to aka.ms Plone containers. If you have any questions, do reach out on Twitter or on my email. Thank you so much.